Agent confirmed.
You have a wife, girlfriend? I'm gonna hurt her, and then I'm gonna kill you right in front of her.
Get down!
It's Hunt. I know it's Hunt.
You will never get what you want! You don't think I'll do it!
Rated PG-13. In theaters everywhere May 5th.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the most glorious of events, the Movie Mavericks podcast. This outstanding program is hosted by two fine gentlemen, Jason and Trevor. Now make it so.
MovieMavericks.com.
Hey now everybody, welcome to a special episode of the Movie Mavericks podcast. I'm Trevor Anderson. Send you over to Jason Rugard. He'll let you know what we're talking about.
On tonight's episode, we're going to be taking a look back at the third entry in the Mission Impossible franchise, 2006, critically acclaimed, but I don't know if it's much loved entry, Mission Impossible 3. This is before they started adding on those goofy subtitles, so this is just plain old MI3. And I don't know, I before we get into it, did you see this in the theater? Did you see this second run? How did you come across this one?
Yeah, I don't think I saw this in a theater. I'm trying to think back on it. I think I just saw this home video.
I saw this on opening weekend, and it wasn't very crowded because if you recall, this was during the height of the couch jumping cruise phase when the public had turned on him. And this was evident
and more
by
than just that, yeah.
The low
whole,
gross.
that South Park thing that happened too.
The Trapped in the Closet episodes.
Yeah, where he tried to get that pulled, or they didn't want to show that anymore, or else he was going to bail out of Mission Impossible 3. And I think there was a brouhaha with the South Park fans over that.
Yeah, so there was a lot. This was the height of the cruise backlash, in short, and it was directly reflected in the gross for this movie, I think, which opened up with $47 million in 2006 dollars, and it only totaled, I say only, but it totaled at $134 million here in the States, which was definitely a disappointment coming off the highs of Mission Impossible 2, which was the highest grossing film of the year 2000. So definitely considered a disappointment. My personal favorite in the series is part 2. So I came into this movie with such high expectations. And I didn't know who J.J. Abrams was other than that he made Lost and Alias, but I hadn't watched either of those shows at this time.
And
I wasn't familiar.
To be fair, you're talking about, this is his directorial debut.
And he would be, the king of sequels in a lot of ways with doing this and revamping Star Trek and Star Wars and taking on these old properties and freshening them up.
You would agree that this is the beginning of what we get with Mission Impossible going forward. Like this is the true beginning of Mission Impossible. Yeah, the first and the second movie are very different, even though there are thematic elements from those, especially for the first one, included in the last, what are there, 4 now? 4? Was that the 6th one or the 7th one that just came out?
The 7th one.
It was the 7th. So yeah, these last 5, I guess, movies, but this was the beginning of the franchise, I would say.
Yeah, as much as I love the second one and I really admire the first one, you could step into the series with this one and have it as a launching pad because of the character of the wife. And my big problem, or something I had a hard time getting over when I saw this movie was, and it's not a knock on Michelle Monaghan, but I thought she looked so similar to Katie Holmes that they should have just casted Katie Holmes at that point. I thought it was a odd similarity where I couldn't get the reality away from the film in that point.
Well, he doesn't want to work with his wife,
Yeah, well, neither did a lot of people. She wasn't in many movies after that. Did you have a problem with Michelle Monaghan being cast in this at all? Did you see similarities there?
I had no problems with any of the casting in this, no. It is interesting. There were other people lined up for this, Kenneth Branagh, Scarlett Johansson, and I think Carrie-Anne Moss was also at one point. So I don't know. That also seems like a fine cast to me. I don't really think the cast made or break this movie. other than the fact that Philip Seymour Hoffman, I feel like, is almost unjustly used in this because he's kind of a good ass bad guy, man. At least he's highly believable that he's gonna fucking kill you.
He seems annoyed, and I don't know if that was a character acting choice.
It kind of plays into it, though. But we can talk about his character overall when we talk about the end of the movie, because he probably is just annoyed, really.
There's some behind-the-scene footage, and the behind-the-scene footage, Hoffman wants nothing to do with that camera, wants nothing to do with interviews. He is not playing the game at any level. So I wonder what was going on there. But as a villain, this is my kind of entry into this movie, is that the first sequence, it's very intense.
It's very dark, right?
Standoff. I mean, this might be the darkest entry thematically in the whole series, in what the characters are going through.
I really like that about this movie, though, the ebb and flow like that, because it's almost necessary. This is, by the way, this is a classic J.J. Abrams opening where you show the ending first. And this is what he did with Alias and Lost as well, but especially Alias. Show the ending. It's ambiguous, right? You don't really know what's going on, but you kind of get this picture of this. And then you go to the beginning of the movie, and then you go all the way through till you get to that very ending. And then that plays through, and then after that, you get, the hero does whatever they do to get out of it and win, It's a classic Alias episode, and a trick that he uses a lot. To create a movie out of nothing, you kind of get that setup and that payoff feeling, but it's not really a setup and a payoff. It's just jumbled out of order. But I do like that it starts with a dark moment and then it goes into a super fun, light, like comedy-esque, like spy movie with the group getting together and like doing their thing, and they're kind of out there and they're winning in a sense, like they feel like they're on a high, and then just to have that bam turn on a dime. Back into that darker stuff, and we've already been introduced to that. It kind of works. It's almost necessary.
Well, I don't know if this is necessary. Do we need to know what Ethan does, what his home life is? Is it better just to see Ethan climbing a rock?
I'd like to know his schedule. I want to know what he does, all the time. What's his workout like?
My problem with this is that he has the line in the engagement party sequence at the very beginning that I don't like that sequence. I think it goes on too long. I think it's just not very well played by anybody in it. I don't enjoy that sequence at all. I think the only thing it sets up is that he can read lips, and you could have done that in a different way later on. But also, he throws the ice away, and he has to go to the store to pick up ice. And that's the dumbest excuse on top of it.
That's what that's for, right? Is to kind of show you that he's fooling her in some way, or that like that's the setup, right? That he's married, but he wants to have this normal life, and that was the beginning of it too. Right? I'm gonna kill your wife, do whatever all this stuff, and so it's all just for that. It doesn't really have a point.
It to me has too many similarities at that point to True Lies, in that she really thinks he's this mild-mannered person who works for the traffic office.
That's the idea of the spy, right? The spy who has a double life.
But that's not Mission Impossible here. That's you're shoehorning in a storyline and you're giving a character a backstory that I don't know if it's necessary.
Really come back to this. I mean, she shows up late in a couple of the other movies here and there, but really they're pretty quick to reset this, right? To get rid of it.
Which makes it so weird that this is kind of the entry point to the current iteration. So there's a lot of things that they kept and a lot of things that they ditched. One of the main additions here, which I think is very well used, is Benji, the Simon Pegg character, is introduced in this episode. And he's the only new member of the squad, even though he's the IT person, I guess. He's not really even the squad that they reuse thus far.
Right.
But I do think that in terms of things that were brought in, I think Billy Crudup as his handler, if you will, is very good in this. I think he's almost the Cruise-esque, but he's like the evil version. I know they've tried that in other versions, but to me, they look very similar. They're solid actors. I wish they had more scenes together in this movie, to be honest with you.
Well, isn't that? I mean, that's part of the. What I like about this movie is what it went for. What I don't like about it is how it executed it. And talking about that character of his handler, who, we're just going to spoil the whole movie. By the way, for anyone watching this, we haven't seen it, but yeah, it's almost 10 years old.
It's more than that.
It's old. It's
almost
like 15
20
years old.
Yeah.
It would be. It would be like 17, something like that.
Yep.
In any case, he's really the bad guy. Right? Philip Seymour Hoffman's not actually the bad guy. This is like a Dark Knight Rises situation that they try to pull off. And for as many people complain about the Dark Knight Rises, like I understand that complaint here. This is not very good switch off. And the whole like, Lawrence Fishburne is the bad guy is just nonsense. Like I never believed that for a second. It's completely ridiculous.
Used well, though. I mean, he delivers his dialogue well. He's got a couple of punchy lines that I like how he does. And the turning Ethan into a villain or possibly the bad guy had already been worked in the first Mission Impossible. I don't need my hero being pursued by every agency out there. It's something that they keep coming back to, it feels like.
But it doesn't make sense in this one, right? Like the handler is somehow the most powerful person in IMF. He's above the director of Lawrence Fishburne, right? He's doing whatever he wants to do with them. And also you see this coming from a mile away, like the way they go and get the Philip Seymour Hoffman character and they don't tell him the handler guy about it, because obviously he would not want them to go do that because he's an actual bad guy. Like there's so much of the dance that happens in this that's just leads you right to you're just told basically that this guy is actually the bad guy. But how is he able to have like a whole group of people that come in to save the Philip Seymour Hoffman on the bridge, that whole sequence? Like, where do those guys come from?
Yeah. Where did the allocation?
Why is he in charge of them? Like, what is going? I am so confused by this. Like, who is Philip Seymour Hoffman in this? He says he's not. He's nobody. What is he doing? He doesn't appear to be doing anything, really. This other guy is the guy who wants the rabbit's foot. He's the guy that actually wants to do all this stuff. And the Philip Seymour Hoffman character is just some arms dealer guy who's kind of in the mix. I don't understand. I don't like the way they did that. Basically,
if you step back,
they should have just had him be the bad guy and let it be that. I didn't need this switcheroo stuff.
Step back and look at the plot, and the Owen Davidson character, the Philip Seymour Hoffman character, is being used as a patsy in a sense,
yes,
so that he can so that the Billy Crudup character can cover up the fact that he's sending this team in to recover the MI thing, but he has to have it look like it's being a kidnapping so that he tricks them.
That's what I'm saying. But he's basically the Bane character.
Yeah, there's way too much manipulation going on here, and then by the time, like you said, that action sequence happens on the bridge, which is probably the film's high point action-wise, you've lost. I've lost the plot. I'm just watching things play out in front of me. I'm not really invested any longer. I'm just waiting for it, and then we have a full another sequence in China. And my big problem, I guess, with the movie is the cinematography. I mean, this has that saturated look. Everybody looks bad. There's really no glamour shots in this. I not only not like the lens flare, the oversaturated colors,
for a while.
The sweatiness of everybody. Nobody looks.
I agree with you. This movie looks
good.
terrible. The way it's lit, like the blacks seems crushed. Maybe it's just the transfer or something. It did not particularly look very good.
What'd you watch it on? I watched it on our
the
Vudu
Paramount
account.
Plus.
Okay, yeah, so basically the
Voodoo
same.
one's probably the same transfer, to be honest with you, yeah.
And it's Dan Mindell who does good work, but my problem as well is that a lot of this film is at least shot and cut.
Well, it could have
close up medium shots. How many can we some pull the camera back?
It is directed fairly, ridiculously, or rather unoffensively, I should say, is what it looks like, except for those lens flares, which, to be fair, this is the beginning of the lens flare, so they're not like too obtrusive, but they're there. Like they're there enough for me to go, oh yeah, I forgot J.J. Abrams loved that shit for a while.
Yeah, it was a motif.
Yeah. To be fair, for the look of it though, we're talking about a movie. Transfers, the way that they grade these things for viewing at home, they can look quite different than what they look like in the theater sometimes.
But it doesn't, the shot selection here, the way that they cover, there's a very impressive stunt in this movie that gets no coverage or anything. And it's when Cruise in China, when he's in Shanghai, lays on the ground while a semi-truck goes over them. That is shot and edited so poorly, you don't even realize how magnificent that is, that it's really him laying there. They undersell that entire moment. And that's my problem with this movie is it feels like a television director. I know Abrams had to cut his teeth somewhere, but maybe this wasn't the project. And doesn't this movie feel small?
Oh, yeah. This is an episode of Alias.
It's the
like
smallest
I said, down
Mission
to the
Impossible.
writing, to the beats of it. This really feels like as you say, television. Yeah, it does feel small. Yeah, I agree. That's why I thought that they did the wrong thing with the Philip Seymour Hoffman stuff, because Philip Seymour Hoffman's playing it big, and everybody else feels like they're minute compared to him, and it was so much more interesting. I would rather this have been more of a Bond type, like a standard Bond film, which is what it kind of felt like it was telling you it was, but only as a trick, you know?
Well, this is pre-Casino Royale, so the reinvention of Bond hadn't come. So if anything, they're trying to mimic the Pierce Brosnan or the Jason Bourne.
It's more of a standard Bond.
Yeah, and I don't mind that about it. It's a standalone story. It doesn't lead to a bigger world. That's fine. That's not the smallest I'm talking about. The smallest I'm talking about is just the coverage, is just the set pieces. Even the action sequence that is in Berlin in the very beginning doesn't make a whole lot of sense in terms of geography. It's got the helicopters going through the windmill field. It's a cool idea conceptually, but it's not pulled off very interestingly, so it just happens. That's the problem with this movie, is it just happens, and by the time he gets to China, I just don't give a shit anymore. And that wasn't the issue with MI2, which I thought climaxed beautifully on the beach there with the knife fight and the whole thing. So I guess looking at these things in comparison to one another is never a good proposition, but man, this is such a letdown. Even revisiting it here, I find it so dull in every aspect. I really do. I hate to be down on this podcast, but man, I wonder what Joe Carnahan would have done with this. Do you remember when that was a thing?
I mean, I don't know what they would have done with him or David Fincher.
Fuck Fincher doing this.
I really don't think that it would have. Carnahan, I don't know. If this was this couldn't have really been. This must have been a rewrite story, obviously, because J.J. Abrams was heavily involved in the writing of this. So I would imagine. I don't know what the idea is for a Mission Impossible 3 that don't involve J.J. Abrams. I don't know. Have you heard of?
There's a podcast
did they say anything?
Light the Fuse, which has become the official Mission Impossible podcast, and they yanked all their previous episodes down, but you can still get them on some things, but I think it's off Spotify. Regardless, they had in-depth coverage of scripts that were written for it and concepts, and some of them were very out there, and some of them had to do with AI and things like that, and other ones were, it was like a Miami Vice episode. So
I'd be more interested in what the directors were, because they have people writing scripts. There's a lot of variation of scripts for all this kind of crap that's never going to see the light of day. But I would be interested in who, because there's an attachment to something, then there must immediately be some sort of an idea, right? You'd think.
Well, I think that they probably had the locations they want to use, like the Vatican and Shanghai and things like that. But I don't know if the story was punctured all the way through, or if it was just kind of closed
Shanghai is for this Chinese audience, right?
Which this was the burgeoning time of that market, the growth period of that. And that which is now collapsed, it seems like. But this is the beginning of really going for those overseas grosses. And good thing, because that's what bailed this movie out in terms of money, because it just... $440 million worldwide on a $130 million budget. I think that equates to 130 back then is around 200 million today. So that's about what the new one's going to make. So is this really a disappointment? I don't know when you view it like that, inflation wise.
Well, I don't think this was a disappointment. I mean, domestically, it didn't have super legs, but it did well enough for a Paramount movie. This is about par for the game, Every once in a while you get one that does really, really well, but typically they're within this range. So I don't. What are you going to say? They're not the big guys, They're not the Warners and the Disneys. They're the Paramounts.
Do you know what dates this movie to me more than anything is the fact that he gets his mission from a disposable camera.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
It's pretty awesome. I don't understand how he's because he's holding it way out in front of his face when he looks at it. How's he even seeing it through the eyepiece?
I thought it scanned his eye and was playing on his eyeball. That was how I always interpreted that.
Maybe I see what you mean, like a projecting on his eyeball. I mean, there's some funny shit in this movie as far as technology goes. I love the scene where he's doing the the math on the window or whatever. He's creating the Facebook algorithm. He's just like, what the fuck are you doing? What is this? Like, there was a point in time, I forget, but it was throughout the 2000s. I think at the beginning, because of that.
It's a Beautiful Mind.
The movie with Russell Crowe. Thank you. Yeah, Beautiful Mind, where everyone fucking wrote math on a window like that, and everyone thought that was such a cool shot and such a good way to do it. It's funny to see it here again in a ridiculous way. My second favorite thing with that is when Maggie Q is going through and they're trying to get pictures of the Philip Seymour Hoffman guy at the gala thing, and she has the fucking mirror thing that what do you call those?
You talking about when she spills the wine on him at the gallery, and she has and she's taking.
But she has the mirror, which is the picture thing, and as she walks through, it goes. It makes picture noises, like snapping pictures, and she's like walking around with this thing, like pointing it at people. It's so fucking conspicuous and shit, and it's making that noise. I mean, like, isn't everyone like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, not only that, she's supposed to be blending in. She pulls up in a Ferrari in her bright red dress.
Horrible.
And in that
it's
sequence,
a joke. I thought that was funny.
There is a moment in that sequence too that's bizarre when they are kidnapping Hoffman and they got the face switch on, and he opens up the sewer. And he sees Ving Rhames and he goes, "What's up?" He goes, "Nothing. What's up with you?" And it's just like a weird exchange in the middle of this movie.
Well, I think it's just supposed to be fun. Like that whole sequence, that's ridiculous, right? What they go through to get that to capture the guy and get him out of there. It's just nonsense. Like, it's the most overblown plan that you could possibly have had. And so I thought that was just meant to be fun and a bunch of nonsensical stuff.
And it is. That's a fun little sequence in the movie, especially because it's a set piece, but it doesn't necessarily use anything violent other than a car exploding and I think a couple punches being thrown. So that's a fun sequence.
When they had to use the mask, I mean, I think that's such a Mission Impossible.
It's a trope
thing that you have to use it. Yeah. So that was probably a good way for them. Like, okay, we'll use the mask for this sequence, nonsense, whatever. It'll be fun.
And that's something that they lean on heavily in the new ones as a way to get out of narrative corners that they wrote themselves in. Something that the Bournes or the Bonds can't do because they don't have that technology built into their overall makeup, I guess, because that's part of the Mission Impossible lore is that these face-switching masks, and you can't always trust who you're talking to is the real person.
Right, exactly.
Which is fun. I'm glad that they brought that back because that was used very, very sparingly in Mission Impossible 2, more so in Mission Impossible 1. Here's a little bit of trivia for you. You know who did the theme song for Part 2? Do you remember the band? Do you recall? No. It was Limp Bizkit, which is of its time, right? Do you know who did the song for Part 3?
I don't. Look, I just seen the movie. I already don't remember the song
because they don't play it. It got no air. It was Kanye West, and it's called Impossible, and the only way you can hear it is on YouTube or if you go to deep in the end credits. Does it not
play in the movie? I was going to say, okay, so that's why I didn't hear it. Because I almost don't remember. I certainly would have remembered a Kanye song. I don't remember that.
So it was a big announcement that he was going to be doing the theme song and he was going to rework it and do a remix. That got shelved. And then he did a song called Impossible, which has nothing to do with the movie, but it's on the end credits. So if you're looking for that.
That's why it's impossible.
And I want to say that there was a big marketing stunt gone wrong where they put like a fake bomb in a couple of newsstands around the country, and if it was in it was like a device, and if it was in yours, you called in. And yeah, I mean, you could look this up. There was some sort of marketing stunt gone wrong, and people called. I mean, this is not that long after 9/11, so obviously that's people, especially in big cities, are very weary of explosive devices. And this is back when newspaper stands were. I remember that story coming and going, and that Paramount being. I think they had to donate some money to some sort of fund, some police fund to quiet that up. But let's see here.
Oh, here it says. Oh, so they rigged 4,500 randomly selected LA Times vending boxes with digital audio players that would play the theme song when the door was open, but the players did not always stay concealed, and they came loose and fell on top of the stack of newspapers, and people thought they were bombs. So that's what you're talking about. Wow.
That's what I'm talking about. I
don't remember that, actually. I don't remember hearing that, huh?
I do remember also the feud between the head of Paramount, Sumner Redstone, who passed away recently, and Cruise, and making a big deal that Cruise had lost his sex appeal to women because of his antics, and nobody wanted to see his movies. But then there was also the talk that Cruise's very lucrative deal with Paramount was coming to an end, and he was using this as leverage to renegotiate a shitty deal. If you recall, Cruise would then leave and go to take over United Artists, which would produce Valkyrie, and I guess the best thing about that is that it starts his working relationship with Christopher McQuarrie. But do you think that his behavior directly affected this? Because War of the Worlds wasn't affected. That was massive for him the summer before, and that was kind of in this timeline too. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It certainly tarnished his reputation because everyone talked about that, and you can tell that it did something because he overcorrected for it, right? He was completely absent from the public eye as much as possible for a while, and I think in order just for people to stop talking about him, he just disappeared, so yeah, I think it did do some damage to him, but obviously when the movies are big enough and good enough, people don't care. They'll come see it.
I think there is separation. I don't think that people can it's like when people go, well, I don't see Tom Cruise movies because he's a Scientologist. It's like saying you don't see Ben Stiller movies because he's Jewish.
But I'll tell you what, sense to me. Yeah, but I actually have heard from people around here, people that I know that do not go see Tom Cruise movies, and because they don't like him, and they haven't seen Tom Cruise movies. Like, they stick by that. They haven't seen him.
That's, to me, it
seems
crazy.
Weird to me.
Yeah, because, I mean, a movie's a movie.
I don't do that.
I can separate
Yeah, I would never do that. I would still hate the person, but I can enjoy their performance.
Yeah, 100%. So, and especially in this, because this is such light entertainment. And as I watched this movie, and I'm looking at Cruise running his ass off in Shanghai, and I'm thinking, my God, I'm the same age as him when he made this movie. And this guy is fit as a fiddle, sprinting down the sidewalks of Shanghai and the roofs.
I did forget about the Tom Cruise running stuff until I saw watching this movie again brought that all back, because he's definitely high stepping it through here, just running as fast as I can. I watched it with my dad. My dad was even like, "Damn, the guy can run, can't he?"
And he still can. In the new
that
one.
was his thing for a while. Yeah. It's still here and there, but it's not as much as it was. Like, it was pretty prevalent in a lot of stuff for a while there.
Yeah, even in the first Mission Impossible, when he jumps out of the restaurant window.
Yeah, it was very big there. I mean, and yeah.
My question, in terms of the character and wrapping up just our thoughts on the Ethan character in this movie, is he an asshole in this movie? Because he's lying to her the entire time. And if you look at Julia, his wife, the character, and the movie from her point of view, she has no idea why she's being kidnapped, dragged to Shanghai, and a gun put to her head. And he basically keeps telling her, I'll tell you later, I'll tell you later, I'll tell you later. And then the movie ends with him beginning to explain it to her, right? When they're leaving Shanghai, and then she knows and meets his co-workers, and everything's all good there. But 99% of this movie, he's lied to her. She's a very sad character to me in the Mission Impossible franchise.
As much as any character that lies to people is an asshole. Yeah, that would be the part of the spy thing, right? Don't you have to do what you have to do?
But even True Lies,
I don't know. He doesn't do it to put her in danger, right? He's not doing it to hurt her. He's doing it to protect her. So I don't know. Just because it doesn't work out that way doesn't mean that he doesn't make him an asshole, right?
Well, he's lying to her where he's at constantly, and there's never the scene where he comes clean to her and they have the moment. That's what I always thought. I know the movie runs about
the
a couple minutes longer than 2 hours.
She does know they have the ending. I mean, she kills the bad guy.
It's a montage where she does kill the bad guy too. I always forget about that. And
that's how weak this movie is, man. The ending of this movie is so weak.
He beats Philip Hoffman up with his elbows, holding his head with a migraine. It's awful. I know,
and he's like, Philip Seymour Hoffman's like, you got 4 minutes. Like 20 minutes later, he's like, get this thing, you got to shock me. It's one of the worst endings. And then after telling you that Philip Seymour Hoffman's not the bad guy, this other guy is, and he's basically just a fucking weenie, and he just gets killed. He's just shot right away. There's no big ending to this. I hated the ending on this movie.
And Eddie Marsden's in this as one of the henchmen, who some might remember as the bad guy or one of the bad guys in the Sherlock Holmes movies. He's a great actor. He is so poorly used in this. He should have been much, the second in command should have been more heavily played. I think of Will Patton and John Travolta together in the Punisher movie, and that's not a great movie, but that's a great combo of henchmen and second in command, and that's what this movie's really missing too. But then again, then you have another villain who doesn't support anything going on in the story because the story's not about the villain.
Yeah, because they had a hidden villain.
Yeah, it's about the bad guy with in our midst, in a plain sight. So
yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of issues with this movie in general. I really thought, for the most part, it's not that bad of a movie. It's fine to watch, but it is one of the more... I don't think it's the worst in the bunch, because I really think number 4 is fucking horrendous. But it is ultimately very forgettable. But it does give us that... it does give us the modern franchise as we know it, and some really good movies came out of it, so I'm so glad this movie exists. I just wish it was better. I
like this more than 4. If I had to rank the movies, I would say 2, 5, 1, 6, 7, 4 is how I would go, because I just don't like the Ethan character in part 4. I don't think it's written
that
well.
I think is respectable. Yeah, he's horrible in 4. I find it hard to get through because they introduce him in such a douchey way, and then he's just horrible through that whole movie. He's not the normal Tom Cruise character. He's super douchey.
Well, not to get off on a tangent about part 4 and the problems inherent with that, but also that's the Renner beginning, where they try to shoehorn Renner as possibly the next guy, and that goes
That's
nowhere.
True.
He's not even in the franchise anymore. So that was a dead idea of the time, and that was the direct result of the
And now Cruise says what, he's going to be making Mission Impossible movies till he's 80?
Not if the audience doesn't show up. I hate to tell people that. That's a major component of all of this.
Well, it would be fine. If this one's as bad as you say, then we got another one in the pipeline, and then we can be done with it. That's fine with me.
It's not that it's a bad movie. It's an overblown, too dense for its own good movie, but with some fantastic action sequences as to be expected.
Yeah, but that's still the problem with those movies like that is that it really eats into the rewatchability of them.
There's not very high on this new one.
No, because if you're bored the first time, imagine the 4th time you watch that movie.
And I always try to watch something again to see if I missed something, because a movie can hit you at different times. Whatever mind state you're in.
It can be fun to rewatch movies, yeah.
And you'll catch things.
But I prefer... Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I prefer a movie that's at least lean, or if it's not lean, then at least has interesting things happening in it all the way through, and so you have something to watch. Like, I couldn't imagine watching Mission Impossible 3 again now. There's nothing interesting in it.
I watched another sequel just the other night, and I forgot how deftly it moves, and that's Blade 2. And that's a sequel I can put on and rewatch once every couple years, because it's an improvement upon the original. It's the high point of the series. Well, this isn't the high point of the series. This can be rewatched because it is a fairly light entertainment, even though it's the darkest one of the series. I wouldn't put on Mission Impossible 6 or 7 because it requires so much attention. There's so much diversion going on in terms of the story, too, that this is a 40-minute segment that doesn't even push the narrative anywhere. We're just now fucking around and wasting screen time and money. So at least this movie doesn't have that problem.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, to be fair with these as well, like most of the run times on these have been pretty consistently at about 2 hours or a little over, aside from
Fallout,
the last ones here.
Yeah, Fallout and this new one.
Yeah, Fallout is a little bit longer, and this one I think is
significantly longer.
Yeah, quite a bit longer as well, right? So I don't know. That's a bad trend. I think that they need to redo, but it certainly helps in going back and revisiting movies if they're 2 hours or less. It's a lot easier to go back. It doesn't feel like a chore,
I watched this recently when we rewatched Mission Impossible 3 with my girl, and she had never seen this one, although I took her to see Part 7, so I kind of wanted to have some idea. And she didn't care for this movie at all. I mean, she thought it was...
I'm sure
pretty dull, and
there's nothing for a woman in this movie at all.
Well, I think that's why they brought in the wife character, and to give him a home life.
But they don't use her to that degree. I mean, she just exists. Like, she's actually really a prop in this movie.
Well, so's the other
Ethan.
character. So's the other female character. The
Felicity.
What's her name?
Carrie Russell is She's definitely used as a prop as well.
And something that
there's nothing in here for women. Yeah,
something that she was confused about, and I guess that they do clarify it in a line of dialogue, but I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if Ethan's lying to Luther, but Luther does challenge him and say, you know, are you sleeping with her? Mm-hmm. No, she's like my sister. All right, well, did you sleep with your sister? And he just gives him a look. Yeah. He never answers. And I know that's probably the angle that they're playing, like he's morally better than that, but I think it would have made it more interesting if this would have been an ex-lover. Mm. And so it's a little bit more complicated than that he's going after somebody he still might care about, and then she dies, and he's, you know.
Well, I took that as more meaning she's dead. We got a little bit of information there, and of course there's a flashback to where he's training her and stuff, but they don't show any sexual things for that. But I took that as Luther asking him, is this really worth it? Like, we're going to go through all this shit. Is it really worth it? And he was kind of pissed that he even asked him that, and especially when to the degree that he did, saying like, you know, sleep with your sister, right? Like, I don't know. That's how I saw that scene.
Okay, so we read it slightly different, but it is slightly ambiguous to me, at least, that if he did or didn't. And I think that they could have at least put in a shot or two, maybe, you know, like a hand touch, something that would signify there was some sort of intimacy there, and not just an instructor trainee. Because otherwise, why does he really? You know, he must have trained a lot of people.
I know, I agree as well. But it did feel that scene at least did feel, you know, more. I mean, really, it looked like more fatherly daughter to me. But it was more of in line of that it wasn't sexual, right? But I don't know why that scene's even in there, because it doesn't do anything for the movie other than it proves, I guess, that it wasn't sexual. I don't know.
I think it's also interesting they had the blonde and the brunette, just like they've been doing, and they always have like the archetype there. You know, one over here with the two. There can never be two blondes, two brunettes. It's always like, especially in the new ones, same thing. Well, Vanessa Kirby, Haley Atwell.
I mean, in Alias, it was a brunette, and then a blonde was introduced.
There you go. I never watched any of Alias. Should I? And judging on the merits of this, I don't think I'm interested. Should I go watch Alias? Is this worth? Is it better
I like
than
Alias.
this show?
I mean, Alias is like, Alias is interesting because it's a spy show, and then it turns into Lost, and it gets fucking weird. And it's pretty good. I liked all of it.
Okay.
I mean, I like Alias, but it is a J.J. Abrams TV show. It starts as a straight up just weird spy movie, and it gets weirder.
That's J.J. Abrams for you. Whenever you're in doubt, throw in some supernatural or some mystery or some unanswered.
There's like a Da Vinci. There's this guy called Rimbaldi, and he's like a Da Vinci guy, and they're looking for all his inventions and stuff and all the shit that he's made. And so it's very like it's just fucking weird, you know?
Huh. Maybe I will give it a shot. I think I've seen it. I think you and I watched the pilot years ago.
Yeah.
Which was very much like this movie in terms of the look and style. So I don't know. I'm a little disappointed we went back and looked at this because in my mind, I thought this was a little bit better than it ultimately turned out to be. But I still think it's my fourth favorite out of 7.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I definitely agree. This is bottom of the barrel, which really isn't that bad. And maybe that says something for this franchise, because it's not like this is the worst movie ever made. So to have this be second to last out of what's going to be 8 movies, because I'm sure that last one's not going to be worse than this.
The only thing that they held over from this on any of the subsequent sequels is the girl and Benji. That's it. That he was married at one point and Benji, and everything else was retconned very quickly. Interestingly enough.
Well, even I mean, even the wife, they get divorced right after this, and she shows up here and there, but very like they basically got rid of her. But they're not willing to. Actually, they didn't really retcon it, did they? Because I guess they kind of retconned the whole fact that they had his handler like was basically a mole in the thing took over.
The fourth movie starts, he's in prison for avenging her death. I mean, that's the reason he has to break him out. And then at the end of the fourth, they show you that cameo where she's still alive and he knows it.
Yeah.
So, but if he knows it, when did he get that knowledge? Because he's in prison for murdering some. You know, it's like, what's...
I know. I don't like the fourth one at all. I don't. But yeah, it's weird. I don't know. It really... 1, 2, and 5 and 6 are pretty solid fucking movies, really. So,
and that's about 60% of the overall series. So I can't. At least that's better than the James Bonds for me recently. But they all have the same problem.
The Fast and Furious movies, which those all blend together for me.
Yeah, and I visited those not that long ago. I can't really
pick out good ones. I don't know. They're all the same. Like, I really like the first one and the third one, but I like those because they are pretty vastly different than the rest of them. And from the fourth on, they just kind of diverge into the same long storyline movie.
I rewatched them, and over the last year, I forgot completely that Part 6 existed, and they went to London. Like, totally forgot that whole, and that's a decent one.
But it's just like a day in the life adventure at this point with those, right? They introduce characters and things, but nothing really changes.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen the 10th one yet, so I can't make a judgment on that, but I would imagine that that series is spinning its wheels, figuratively.
Although I guess if this went on for another couple movies, it would really be the same thing as Fast and Furious, wouldn't it? Because it wouldn't.
It's becoming that.
I don't think they're going to change anything different in this. And to be fair, we complain James Bond when they try to change stuff. So.
Yeah, there's no winning with us
maybe
fans.
Keeping the stuff the same. Yeah, maybe keeping it the same might be a better idea. But you do get bored after a while with that kind of stuff, especially if you're going to be making really long movies and you want them to be like have an epic feeling to them. They have to be big blockbusters. It becomes relatively obvious that you're just making the same movie over and over again if you're making so many in a franchise like so quickly.
And now that the world is getting smaller, these ideas that these movies are travel logs like the original James Bonds were, even the Fast and Furious tries to do that. But the Fast and Furious shot at a lot of the same locations as the new Mission Impossible. So it's weird when you're watching something, you go, I just saw a movie that was filmed there, and there's only so many ways you can cover a city, and it's not novel any longer. So that's gone. And in the new one, they do shoot all over Italy, but so what? We've seen it in lots of things. It's not interesting anymore.
I mean, I think they shot all over Italy. I think you maybe saw the porn version. That seems.
No, they did. They shot on the Spanish Steps, just like where they had in the last Fast and Furious, an entire action sequence. So 2 set pieces in 2 movies of the summer in the same location is, it's, regardless of who did it better, it's not interesting any longer. It's not a novel idea. It's supposed to wow you. It doesn't.
Well, they're making movies for the whole world now, so they got to do that, right?
Well, I mean, the last Transformers, The Rise of the Beast, was shot predominantly, I guess, in Peru, and it's now the highest grossing movie ever in Peru, which I don't know how big their box office is, but that's a reason why they do these things in the tax breaks, obviously.
All 10 people in Peru went and saw it.
Yeah, I think they brought 12 this time. They got 12 people to the theater instead of 10, which was what Titanic did, or Avatar. All right, well, that's going to wrap up our episode on Mission Impossible 3. Are you happy we saw this again? Obviously, I'm a little disappointed. What's your final take on it? What's your hot take?
I'm glad we watched it again because I haven't seen it in a long time, and I probably wouldn't have watched it otherwise. I have no reason to revisit this other than if we're doing a podcast on it, so it works out. It's fine. I've seen it again.
I caught it on, strangely enough, as we were watching it, I had it on an iPad. I was in a hotel room, and the TV was playing, and it was on MTV of all things, and the fucking movie was playing on MTV. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. It was 20 minutes behind where I was at because of the commercials, but still, it was bizarre. So this movie is still getting play, and people, I guess, are still watching it, but this did play on TBS constantly.
It was just they thought it was the Kanye
Kanye version
music video, so they turned it on. Yeah,
that probably would have been more entertaining for its audience. But well, thank you guys for joining us. Speaking for Trevor Anderson, I'm Jason Rugard, and we are the Movie Mavericks.
Oh my! Another magnificent episode has come to an end. If you're craving more, set your destination to MovieMavericks.com. Warp 9. Engage!